Joining us now, State Senator, Northern Virginia, Democrat, District 29, Jeremy McPike. Senator, good to have you, man.
Good morning, John. Happy Monday. Happy President's Day.
Well, thank you, and thanks for calling me up the other day and trying to give me an education on one of the things we were talking about. So I want to start with that while it's fresh in our mind and we have time. We were talking about the Colonial Downs and Dumfries and MGM and how all that plays out, and the fact that you were saying that you thought that maybe Colonial Downs here was doing some bait and switch about how many machines they have and what they're trying to do. Give us your perspective on that, Jeremy.
Sure, John. There's a couple things. As you talked about on Friday on the show, the proposal and as a part of the casino deal that 1,800 additional machines would be added to Dumfries. Now, the referendum that just passed in the town of Dumfries included at the time in the administrative regs 150 machines. And so there's sort of one procedural thing to think about. Should we move forward where the voters approved a referendum thinking that there's 150 machines, and now by this bill that's going through on the casinos, they're going to add 1,800 machines. That's more machines than the entire state of Kentucky. So that's sort of a one big procedural problem, right? Is do you let something go forward that has such a significant change? And I think the second thing is the taxation rate. These are not taxed like the casinos would be taxed, and that's a big deal. I know it's sort of represented on the show the other day that this would restore money to schools, when in fact, off the $1.1 billion in handle that Colonial Downs collected last year, well, that's $1.1 billion. The state collected $12 million in tax. So think about that ratio. So
what is that? 1.1%?
Yeah, 1.25 on the handle. So it's roughly about 12% on the net gross revenue. And so that's much different than what the casinos would be taxed, and that's still moving through the process, but let's say it's 30%.
Right.
That's a huge difference.
So it would be the difference, 12%, not of the handle, right? Not of the total money wagered.
Yeah, the 1.25 is on the handle of the total wager, so it equates to about 9 to 12% of the total bet, of the revenue. So the net gaming revenue coming in. Net
gaming revenue in. So because as you bet so you're talking about when you say net revenue, the money that the casinos are actually winning, right?
That's right. After payouts, everything else. Yep.
After payouts. So about 10% after payout, they're paying in taxes for the HHR machines, Colonial Downs, and a full-service casino, if that were to pass in Virginia, that tax rate is going to be at about 30%.
It's higher on the Senate version. It's lower in we still got to work it out as the bill works through. But let's say about 30%.
So to give if Colonial Downs is 1,800 machines in Dumfries and they dominate that area, trying to compete with MGM, what you're saying is Dumfries is better off with a full-service casino because that'll be a better competitor for MGM and the tax rate will be higher.
Well, it's amazing. I mean, the 1,800 machines is still net, just the one location, over $1 billion, just the one location. So its projected revenue is about $115 million. Now you put in the casino option. Now you're talking about $600 million because it's a different product, right? You got table games, you got slots, you got the rest of it. So $600 million in total gaming revenue. So with a 30% tax, that's going to be $180 million to Virginia versus $12 million. That's a huge delta. Not only that, but if we had, for instance, allowed Dumfries to move forward with roughly 2,000 machines, and we add a casino in Northern Virginia later on, it's going to hurt Colonial Downs by roughly the same thing that's going on now, by about 40%. So we're going to owe them $40 million every single year.
So help us understand in Dumfries, right, in Northern Virginia. Now, I'm in favor, as you are, of getting a casino there. Yep. So why not just have a casino there, have the referendum to have a full-service casino, and then Colonial Downs could make the bid on that like anybody else?
They could. And so that's sort of the part of the rub is, I don't think that a lot of legislators have sort of thought about the casino in Northern Virginia. But de facto, we're doing that in the form of a massive slot parlor via Colonial Downs. Without competition, there's not the same investment requirements that the other casinos have.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really apples to oranges, and it's completely different tax structure.
All right, so it sounds like what Colonial Downs is trying to do is establish a major gaming parlor center there, where they have the location, they have the machines, they have the people, they have the jobs, and then when it passes for a full-service casino, they become the incumbent.
Yep, they'd effectively become the de facto incumbent in Northern Virginia, which is a multi-billion-dollar deal. It's a massive, massive deal. We're talking about billions of dollars of wagers every single year that would occur in a Northern Virginia casino based on the JLARC report and the study that came out last fall. So you're talking about a massive deal, and I think we've lost sight of the point, and the point was increasing horse racing at Colonial Downs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they ran, 15 races? They ran 18 races based on $500,000 per purse. And so that's why the additional machines are getting pushed into Dumfries, is because the additional casinos opening up in the Hampton Roads area, Richmond, Bristol, and Danville. And so if you actually look at the solve, you can solve by increasing the purses through a percentage of the casinos that do open up to make up any lost revenue. And by the way, the JLARC report, I think people missed the point on the JLARC report, which said that they're going to cut the revenues in half. That's in future, because there's no competition. It's still going to take 4 years for the casinos to open. Okay, so it'll be reduced based on the future projections. They'll still make, basically, in 4 years, the same amount of money and revenue they're taking in today.
Senator McPike, if it's going to take a 4-year period to get a full-service casino in Dumfries, right? If they take 4 years to do that, what's the downside of giving Colonial Downs the 2,000 machines now, and they can operate, and then when they're able to get a full-service casino, then they'll have to compete with MGM and everybody else. But right now, the money is still getting sucked out to Maryland.
Well, I think the problem is you create incumbency without competition. And I'm not sure that's the best thing for taxpayers in terms of whether or not the locality gets the best deal. I've had sort of the same conversations across all 5 localities that are currently proposed in terms of how do you know you got the best deal. You know, competition usually drives up the offer. Mm-hmm. And right now, that would be essentially a sole source. Yeah, I just don't think that's a good deal for taxpayers.
All right, so what are you advocating? You're advocating that Colonial Downs, what happens? Because Dumfries has already passed a referendum allowing them in, but what you're saying is now bait and switch because the referendum said 150 machines and they want 2,000 machines.
Yep, I think that's a huge difference. I think if it's going to happen, it should go back through referendum. Number 2, we don't know what the actual impacts are to horse racing, and so we should, frankly, evaluate this. We still have 4 years before the first casino opens up, because all the casinos have to go through referendum, they have to go through local zoning, and they have to go through design and construction. That's going to be multiple years before we get there.
So is that everywhere? Is that just in Dumfries, or is that in Richmond, Hampton?
Yeah, that's
Norfolk?
all of it. Yeah,
it's going to take 4 years.
Yeah, it's still going to take years to go through the referendum, the zoning, the design, and construction.
All right, so if I'm Colonial Downs and I'm operating Rosie's, I have, no matter whether I'm in Richmond, Hampton, or Timbuktu, right, wherever they are, what you're saying is there's a 4-year period where there is no competition. There's
Zero.
Nothing.
Not a single piece of competition.
Because I thought that once we passed it in the General Assembly and it went to referendum in these areas, that it would be immediate.
Well, you still got to go through the site plan, the design, construction. Maybe they can get it done in 2.5 years, 3 years, but that's pretty aggressive.
Right. So you think it's going to be 3.5 to 4. What about other gambling, mobile phone gambling on baseball, basketball, football?
Yeah,
Sports.
I've got a bill with, in the Senate as well as Mark Sickles in the House to allow for online sports betting. North Carolina has it. West Virginia has it. D.C. is ramping up this March. Maryland's going to have it. So all of our surrounding jurisdictions have it. Right now it occurs on the black market. Let's get it into the sunlight. Let's have some transparency. Let's have some tax on it. And frankly, all that information is allowed to be shared back with the sports leagues so they can identify if there's negative bets or bets they don't want to be placed.
Right.
That's a good thing for the sports.
So let me ask you something. What is the time period for that? What is that? if you were to pass that in the 2020 General Assembly and the governor signs it, and I don't think there's any reason that he wouldn't. He's signing everything. So he signs that.
Yep.
When does it start? July? August?
Yeah, so it would start in July. The lottery, who would be regulating, needs to get the regs in place. So it'd be probably 4 months before they get in place, hopefully by the start or just after the start of the NFL season is the goal for this fall.
In 2020?
In 2020, so a customer can actually download that app and place a bet on their favorite game.
And how would you determine, Senator McPike, how would you determine what companies are involved in that? Because like the horse racing app, Horse Racing Legal in Virginia, there's probably 5 or 6 different apps that compete for that dollar. I think I use Twin Spires, but there's 5 or 6 others. I could download any of them. They all have deals. They text me all the time with deals because I'm a player for the horses. How many companies would you allow in the bid, right? There's DraftKings and there's all those other ones. How would you determine that?
Yeah, I think Caesars, MGM,
right.
Rush, a bunch of companies have different apps. Yeah.
Right.
And so in both the House and Senate version, we have between 10 and 12 licenses that would be allowed in Virginia.
If you were to grant 10 licenses, they'd all be able to compete, and they'd advertise on various billboards or digital, and then people would decide which one they wanted to go with.
Absolutely. Yep. It'll allow them to compete for the customers within that market, but the biggest thing is it has a regulatory framework. The state has visibility into what's going on. There's problem gaming associated with it as well, that pay into the fund there, and taxed at a 15% rate, which is about 3% higher than the JLARC report recommended. But
and the 15%, is that taken out of each bet out of the handle, or is that on the gross? The gross revenue.
Yep. That's right. So 15% on the gross
of the
revenue.
Profit.
That's right.
Not of the handle.
That's correct.
All right. So like if I bet $100, it's not like I'm like if you when you take the tax money out of the racetrack, it's off the handle. So when I make a bet at Colonial Downs and I bet $100 to win, in actuality I'm betting $85 to win because whatever the percent, 8%, or it comes out immediately.
That's right.
The 15% tax on gaming is for bookmaking. That would be the net profit made in Virginia on that particular vendor, right?
That's right. I mean, there's some pricing sensitivity, so we don't overtax it and then therefore send folks to the black market, right?
Right.
There's certainly offshore stuff you can bet on and other stuff. And I think there's some pricing sensitivity that we need to keep in mind, and that's why we've set right now a 15% tax.
Right. So you want to be sure that the players are getting a value for their dollar and you're not chasing them out.
Exactly.
Back
I
to
think
the Bahamas.
Exactly. We tax it too high, 25, 30%, people will go back out to the Bahamas for the online apps.
Got it. Okay. How does that appear? Do you have the votes in the Senate to pass it right now?
Yeah, so yes, it's passed the House and the Senate in terms of we have 2 different versions. Mine includes college betting right now. The House version does not. So I think that's going to be the major thing to work out in conference as the legislation passes both chambers. Frankly, college bets happen right now.
You got to include. See, if you want to not chase money offshore,
yep,
you've got to include college betting because that's a big part of what people do. They bet college basketball and college football. I know people, quite honestly, offshore that bet college baseball. I don't. Never have. But they do that. So, but everybody bets college football. So to take that out, that's just a reason to take your money elsewhere. Makes no sense. Look, you can't regulate this stuff. I mean, it's like trying to say, we don't want you to gamble. We don't want you to gamble on college football. It's already happening. So either you take the money or you give it to Maryland or you give it to Delaware or you give it to West Virginia or you give it to Aruba. That's where the money's going.
Yeah, I mean, and right now we've got so many commuters that go into D.C., North Carolina, West Virginia. All of these states have or are going to have these apps in place in the next 6 months. And so why would you lose, tax dollars coming back to Virginia?
Yeah.
It's crazy, absolutely crazy.
Well, especially the one in D.C., right? I mean, I go there every week. I'll be there. I'm there, 50 out of 52 weeks. I mean, all you have to do is change your status, and then you can download the DC app. So then the tax money is going to the District of Columbia, my tax money, instead of Virginia. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, there's still a push by some of the Virginia colleges to ban it, and it's a continuing conversation. I'm hoping we include it because I just don't think it makes sense. I think it's putting our head in the sand and ignoring the fact that this is going to continue to occur. I'd rather have Virginia data, have the regulators have information that they can send to the schools as well.
Makes sense.
Makes
sense. All right, let's get to one Virginia redistricting reform bottled up right now in the House. I know the Senate is fine with it. You guys have made a commitment to that. A lot of people looking at this, and a bunch of Democrats voted for it in the House in 2017 before they had power. Now Joe Lindsay's got a subcommittee bottling this up. It really strikes me as hypocritical. How do you can you get this out of this subcommittee, even though you're not on the House side? How does that work?
Yeah, so I think there are a couple things going on. I don't know what the House members thinking is on it, but there are criteria bills, so not constitutional amendment, but bills that have passed the Senate in addition to the constitutional amendment. So there are still several vehicles to deal with redistricting that are in play. And I think that's what needs to play out in the next 2 weeks here as we close out the session. Well, I guess we have 3 weeks, but the next few weeks to close out the General Assembly session. So there will be some form of criteria. The question is, will it be in the Constitution or will it simply be in the form of legislation?
Does it matter?
I think the bills have a lot of the similar language and criteria both in the legislation and the Constitution. And I think there's been a push for years. I was a member of One Virginia 2021 almost, 8 or 10 years ago, helping to push this as well to get it in the Constitution. But each chamber, that's the way it works. We're bicameral, and they've got to decide what they want to do as well.
Okay, so final question here on that. Whatever they come up with, there can't be any changes to it, or it can't go on the ballot in November. So it has to be the same.
That's right.
It has to be the same.
That's right. So, the Constitution Amendment has to be what it was last year.
And that's already got the backing in the Senate, right? And
that's correct.
I'm told that if it went to the floor of the House, 60 to 65 members would vote in favor of it. So basically, if it gets bottled up in that committee, Privilege and Elections Committee, and Joe Lindsay bottles it up somehow or some way in the subcommittee, how's it going to look?
I think it's tough. A lot of us have voted for it and supported it in the past. I think their fallback position would have to be on how well the criteria legislation, not amendment, but legislation is written. And I think there's been some good language in terms of not favoring one part or the other, communities of interest. There's lots of different factors. As you know, it's not an easy subject. It gets really complex. But I think to increase the transparency and fairness if we get there somehow, is a good outcome.
Okay, final question. The Virginia Restaurant, Lodging, and Travel Association is blasting what they see as a $500 million meal tax on Virginians. This meal tax has been going around in Northern Virginia forever. How do you stand on it? Have you spent any time on it?
I haven't, John. Certainly some localities have passed meals taxes. Some have rejected them in the past and via referendum. That's still keeping an eye on things as we move forward.
All right. Senator Jerry McPike, thank you for that elaboration on Dumfries and what your position on casinos is there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it.